This episode is sponsored by Linode. Linode is offering listeners of this podcast a $20 credit, which is good for 4 free months at their lowest plan. Their plans start at 1 gigabyte of RAM for $5 a month. You can get your servers in any of their 10 data centers, and their high memory plans start at 16 gigabytes. Get a server running in under a minute. They do hourly billing with a monthly cap on all plans and add-on services like backups, node balancers, Longview, etc. VMs for full control, running Docker containers, encrypted disks, VPNs, etc. You can run a private Git server. They provide native SSD storage, 200 gigabit network, and Intel E5 processors. They have 24/7 friendly support, even on holidays, and a 7-day money-back guaranteed. So go check them out at linode.com/freelancers show.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Freelancers Show. This week on our episode, which we're calling Sunsetting Products and Services, we've got Jonathan Stark.
Hello.
And I'm Reuven Lerner. And, well, we all love to talk about products, and we all love to talk about services. We all love to talk about how wonderful it is to do productized consulting and so forth. But sometimes you've got a dud, or sometimes it's not working, or sometimes it's not making money fast enough. So we're here to talk this week about when and how to pull the trigger, and how not to feel too bad about it, because I still feel bad about it. So Jonathan will make me feel less bad.
Sure, yeah. This is sort of the other side of the coin, isn't it? You know, we're always teaching people how to create products and services and how to price them, and and we generally are advocates of creating productized services, for freelancers, independent freelancers that have some skill that they typically rent out to their clients on an hourly basis. It's like, hey, you could really increase your profits by separating time from money and do maybe a road mapping type of thing, or some sort of diagnostic with recommendations, some kind of report or marketing calendar or editorial review, depending on whatever your skill set is. You could sort of package up something that you find yourself doing for all of your normal freelance clients and describe a scope, pick a price for it, put it on your website, kind of like a sort of public proposal to the whole wide world and all of your potential clients. Like, hey, if you have needs like this particular product is for you. And I think it's probably the easiest way to productize services. I think is one of the easiest ways to experiment with all of the topics we talk about here, from positioning to pricing to marketing, outreach, inbound marketing, everything. It's not really a bet the business thing. It's just like a little sandbox for you to practice in. But, of course, with any new endeavor, sometimes they don't, maybe the price is too low, or nobody buys it, or the price is too low for you to make a profit, or the price is too high for anyone to buy it, or it doesn't really go the way you thought, or whatever. It might be something you're sick of doing, or it might be something, if it's your first one and you create some new products or services, or something in between like productized services, maybe the old one, the original one, doesn't really fit in your product ladder anymore. Maybe you want to do something more high value, has a different scope, different target audience. There's a million reasons why a product or service might become less attractive to you as your career proceeds, as your business grows. And we started talking about this pre-show because Reuven mentioned that I think you said you're thinking about killing off more than one. And I, in fact, recently stopped offering one product and one productized service. So we figured we'd talk about that today and sort of the thought process behind doing that. Sound good?
Absolutely. Yeah, sounds great to me.
So what's on the chopping block for you?
So let's see. So I already killed something off, I guess about a year and a half ago or so, and that was a daily tech video. And this was my idea of, well, if you build it, they will come. Ha 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 ha.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, I hated the movie anyway. But but basically, the idea was, well, people want to watch lots of tech videos, like people want to watch conference videos, and this would be sort of a a curated list of those. And as the name implied, it would be a daily tech video. And basically, the idea was I'll get enough people watching this, right? Enough people, enough eyeballs, I'll be able to get some money from advertising. And I think I did it for about a year. It wasn't always daily, but it was close.
Wow.
And I had such a small number of fans that I realized at a certain point, oh my God, like I just cannot do this anymore. And it's just never going to work. So I put up a message one day. I think it was actually 2 years ago now that I think about it. And this was my first time ever just like killing something off, saying I sort of promised the world, not that the world was waiting with bated breath to see this, but I promised the world I would keep doing this. And I put a note saying, nope, I'm going to work on other stuff now. And the silence was pretty deafening. So I think that was a case in which I thought about a product or a service, however you wish to call it, that I sort of liked the idea of, and that I sort of assumed there would be enough people who would be drawn to it, and just never picked up steam. And if there's anything I regretted about it, or regret about it now, it's that I waited too long to kill it off. That I was so sentimental about it. I was so convinced if I only give it a little more time, it'll take off, and then I'll have thousands of views a day, and then I'll make money from advertising. And this just turned out to be nonsense for reasons that are not entirely obvious to me, except that, there's this video channel called YouTube. And I think for many people, they don't necessarily want a curated list. They're willing to go with people who saw this also saw that, and that's like good enough for them. So that was but that was the first thing I killed off, and I wanted to think that it was. I also was sort of then less sentimental and more willing to kill things off. But we'll go through the episode, and I'll describe other things that I've been more reluctant to kill off and clinging to hope on. And it would seem that sentiment and a lack of ruthlessness is in my soul.
Mm. It's hard when you make a public commitment, even if nobody knows, it feels like people know, and it feels like giving up, and it's hard to know, wait, maybe success is just around the corner, I mean, Seth Godin wrote a whole book about it called The Dip, which I haven't read, but I know that is on exactly this subject, which is knowing when to fold them, knowing when to cash in your chips and walk away. So this wasn't a product per se. This was a project more, right? It was like a free thing, sort of like kind of like a podcast, but videos.
Yeah. Although I definitely envisioned it as being like part of my business. I think it was Kurt Elster who said, like, I'm sure that other people said too, but, if you're doing something and you're not making money, it's a hobby. It's not a business. And so I really envisioned it being a small business, maybe not bringing in tons of money. But, there are lots of programmers out there, lots of eyeballs. I can get enough of them. They'll click on some ads. I'll get some ad revenue. I mean, I figured if I could make at least a few $100s a month from it, that would be pretty great. Mm-hmm. But the effort that went into it versus, the ROI was extremely negative.
Right.
So I just said, enough. And every so often, very, very every so often, I sort of regret it. But mostly not. I've moved on. I'm so busy with other things, I don't really think about it much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, this is a good time to bring up opportunity cost, which I think a lot of people have heard, but haven't internalized the meaning of what opportunity costs are. And if that's doing a daily video, that sounds bonkers to me. I mean, I know I read a daily email, and I'm sort of
yes, you want to talk,
right? But for me, like a daily video is like. Really, to me, that is a dramatically higher bar. I can write an email from, be putting my daughter to bed, and she falls asleep on me, and I can do my daily email while she's snoozing on me. It's not like I have to be in a particular place at a particular time with particular lighting or anything like that. It's just very easy to do from anywhere. Very, very, very low friction for me to do that.
Oh, I was not creating a new video every day. I was simply referencing a video that already existed.
Oh, wait a minute. So what do you mean?
I was just finding interesting conference videos and pointing people to them. I was not recording any video.
Oh, okay. That makes a lot more sense.
So that's why I'm like, it's roughly the same amount of work I'd like to think as your daily email.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So this sounds right. So this is almost like one of those Peter Cooper weekly roundups, but you were doing it every day and it was just one video.
That's right.
Kind of thing. Okay, right. That makes a lot more sense. Cool. Okay, that's that. I was surprised you didn't kill it earlier, but now it makes more sense. So here's a perhaps, well, let me finish the idea of opportunity cost. So with opportunity cost, if it was taking you more time than, if it was taking you as much time as I thought it was, let's pretend it was. Let's pretend it took you an hour every day. And you did this with a vague hope that it would be good for your business, perhaps in a marketing sense, or perhaps as a direct revenue driver through ads or sponsorships. And you were like, you had this, the goal wasn't super clear, but you knew you had some kind of business goal. You wanted this to at least, air quotes, pay for itself, whatever that means. And you're spending, 7 hours a week, an hour a day, putting together these videos, editing them, uploading them, deciding what to talk about, so on and so forth. That 7 hours a week could be spent on something else. And then that's the opportunity cost. So if you are doing the daily tech video, it means you're not doing something else. So anything you decide to do, by definition, is you also deciding to not do anything else with those hours. So at some point, and that kind of cost adds up. So if you spend a year doing that, what's that, 350 hours? You could have spent 350 hours writing a book, for crying out loud. So, and you weren't spending this much time, but if you were, then it's a little easier to illustrate the opportunity cost. And with freelancers, not to go too much of a sidebar here, but with freelancers, the opportunity cost, you're paying opportunity costs all the time when you take on a bad client, because it means you don't have time to take on a good client that might come along. So, and you're not doing marketing to attract good clients and all that. So freelancers are always dealing with opportunity costs, usually without knowing it. But okay, so you had this thing. I would submit to you that, at least from your description, it sounds a little bit like you didn't have any clear goals, clear goals and objectives. It was more of a vague sense of, this will be a good thing to do. It might be kind of fun, and maybe I'll make some money from it. So it's hardly surprising that that didn't come to pass. So for me, and I don't always do this, I think I usually have a sense of it, but when I launch something, I usually have a pretty specific sense of how I expect it to perform and on what kind of a timeline. So it's easier for me to not really question it so much when it comes time to, for the spring cleaning, and say, hey, look, this is just not doing anything for me. It's not achieving the goals that I set out to achieve.
And do you set out concrete goals? Like when you launch a new product, would you say, I expect this to make X and Y and Z?
I know, not that concrete, but I know where. I've got a rough idea of financial goals. So it depends. You can be doing stuff that's marketing, like this podcast, for example. This is basically a marketing activity. It's fun and all of that, but I expect to get leads from it. And I do get lots of leads from it. People go to valuepricingbootcamp.com. I talk about it in lots of shows, and I get people on my list, and I can help them on my list too. So it has a business value to me, but other than getting some signups on my list, that's about it. Just hanging out with you guys and talking. So I have relatively low expectations for something like this. But for something like that I'm intending to sell, it's going to have a sales page. It's something that I intend to make direct revenue from. I know exactly where it fits into my product ladder, my list of offerings, products and services. I know exactly where it fits. The price is picked specifically to address a particular slice of the market. So, I need to have something for people who can only afford to spend, maybe $200, then there's something for them. For people who have more money to spend and they want to have more accelerated progress, they can spend $1,000. For people who are really on fire, they've got a lot of money, but they've been stuck for a long time, they can spend $7,500. And, at each level, you get more of my attention and more value. But all of the things in that product ladder are very specifically priced in the context of all the other things. So yeah, I know, and I look, even if I don't have specific financial goals, I'll look retroactively and say, okay, how did my road mapping sessions go Q4 of 2017. And I'd be like, I only sold one. And when I did it, it was a pain because I didn't, because I haven't been doing lots and lots of them. So it's not getting easier and easier for me. So, and that's an example of something I recently killed. So I had a road mapping session where people could pay me $1,295 to jump on a usually about 2-hour phone call, and I would just completely go through their current state of their business and the desired outcomes that they'd like, their desired future state of the business, where they see the business in 3 years or where they want to see it in 3 years, what their current challenges are, what their clients are like, how they're pricing their proposals. It was very in-depth. And then I would go back to my closet and, write up a report for them with specific action items, steps, for how to, here's a map from where you are to where you want to go. And even if we don't have specific steps here and there, then I'm at least giving you a compass so that you can tell when you're going in the right direction and not pulling yourself in every direction at once. And I ended up killing that because for two reasons. One, it really wasn't selling that well, which is no surprise because I wasn't pushing it that much because I didn't like doing it. It turned out to be really hard. So my options were to increase the price. I didn't feel like I would be increasing the value by increasing the price. I didn't feel like I'd be attracting a better type of client because that was my $1,200 product. If I was going to increase the price to probably more like $3,500, then it's kind of like, well, now we're getting into the lower tiers of my coaching stuff, my mentoring stuff. So, and that would be way better than a roadmap. So why would anybody do the roadmap and not the coaching and that kind of thing? So, and yes, I could raise the price on the coaching and mentoring options too, and just sort of make more room between the bottom and the top. But I didn't really want to do that. I think I've got the right price point for the people I'm trying to attract with my top tier offerings. So I was like, it just didn't fit anymore. I was either going to have to change what it was, make it easier, like remove the report, because that's the really hard part, or time consuming, I should say. And then it's like, well, now all of a sudden it's just a coaching call, which is $500. So why would somebody pay $1,300 if they're not getting the report, not getting these specific steps? With the coaching call, you basically get one next step. So you tell me about your business, you tell me about your challenges, you tell me what you want to get out of the phone call, and we get you to that next step, get you unstuck, and you can do the next thing. So that's like $500, and so like there's this spot in the middle where it just didn't fit anymore. And so I just took it off my site. I didn't make a big announcement or anything like that. I just removed it. That makes sense, right?
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, does this mean then you don't do road mapping anymore? Not that it sounds like you missed it, and it sounds like people were breaking down your doors to do it.
Correct. Like if somebody somehow found a link to an old sales page and they sent me $1,300, I would refund it and be like, no, I don't do that anymore. And could you tell me where you found that link so I can take it down?
Wow. So it's not even like if someone finds it, you're just totally not interested in doing that. I guess also writing the reports, because I was going to say 2 hours does not sound like a lot of time to go into someone's business in depth. But then I realized, the report is the time consuming part, even if a lot of it is boilerplate, and even if you can just sort of tweak a few things and make it good for their business, the writing can take a while if you're doing it seriously.
Mm-hmm. I've done, I don't know, maybe more than a dozen of them. And I found that over time, I ended up with a lot of boilerplate. Like they were shorter reports at first, maybe 10, 15 pages, which is still, that's like a term paper. Like that's a lot of work. But over time, I started to see patterns. There were basically two kinds of people that were buying roadmaps. They were sort of like people with a sort of a newer business and people with a more mature business. And still, there was a ton of overlap, but there were some slight differences between those two. So I ended up with a ton of boilerplate, and I was giving people like 150-page reports that were customized for them, but they were mostly boilerplate. But I still had to do it and go through it. And it was almost like editing a book every time I went to deliver one. And then I was like, I'm just going to turn this into a book. And that's actually another reason why I'm killing it, because when the Freelancers Roadmap comes out, which is, going to be my next book, then it would be really weird to have the roadmap and then they get it and it's like a slightly customized version of the book. So, anybody that wants a roadmap, it's kind of like, yeah, just go buy the book. So
Right.
I forgot about that. That was another reason why I was like, I put it on the chopping block. I was like, I could just turn this into a book and I could sell it for, a fraction of, instead of 1,300, it'd be like $50. And yes, it's not customized to a particular person, but, in combination with like a coaching call and Freelancers Roadmap, if you read that book first and then jumped on a phone call with me, you'd save a ton of money, probably get more benefit out of it. Kind of like, hey, Stark, how do I apply this stuff in chapter 2 to my business? I'm kind of like this. So it feels more efficient for everybody because that would be delightful for me. It'd be very easy. And I sell a lot more of those calls anyway. So I know the price point's right. So in retrospect, it's pretty clear. And it's not like, road mapping was not my baby. It wasn't my darling. It was just like a really easy thing to offer when I was first doing my first productized service.
Very interesting. Yeah, I mean, yeah. Look, I think a lot of this with all these products and services, I mean, every business needs to experiment, and a lot of businesses, well, just a huge number of new businesses go out of business every year, right? They just don't survive.
Mm-hmm.
I think in many ways what we're talking about here is sort of using our time skills to try new mini businesses, like micro businesses. And some of them are going to fail and some of them are going to succeed. And we want as many of them to succeed as possible. But sometimes they're just not going to be a good fit. I mean, one of the best lessons in business I ever had was when I was working at HP just after graduating from college. And I was working for HP's medical products group, which has since been sold at least once and maybe twice. I think it's now part of Philips, the thing that I was working with. In any event, someone decided that we were going to get into cardiology MRI. And I remember, I was 22 or something. They, first of all, hired away a bunch of people from other companies to work on this. And they bought 2 superconducting magnets and put them in. And they started spending tons and tons of time and money on this cardiology MRI thing until one day, all those people were fired. And if you're in the market for a superconducting magnet of the size of several pickup trucks, then I know where you might still be able to find one in Andover, Massachusetts. And I asked someone what did they do? What was wrong? And they said basically it was going to make money, but not fast enough to be worth it for the business. Mm-hmm. I was like, wow, I never would have thought of that. In my mind at that point, either it makes money or it doesn't. But sometimes just the ramp up is so great that that's just not worth it. That's not worth your time and your effort.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the calculus with a big company is very complicated. It can be very complicated, and it has everything to do with corporate strategy or lack thereof. So for independent freelancers, it's I don't know if it's, in a sense, it's simpler. It's less complicated. You don't have to have any convince any committees or your board or anything. But at the same time, it's really hard to see the forest for the trees, and it's hard to kill your darlings, So if you're in love with this concept and you spend all this time writing a sales page and doing research and beta testing, and it's selling okay, but it's not ramping up the way you want it to. And if you look at even a rough annual projection of even if I 10x'd my current sales rate, it's still not that great. So, what dials can I move, or should I just cut bait, forget about the sunk cost, and move on to something better? And usually for me, this happens pretty naturally, because in the course of running, just to use the road mapping example, in the course of doing that, I was like, whoops, I wrote a book. So now I've got a new idea came out of it. And, I should really increase. I'm selling these, not as fast as I'd like to, but the experience that I gained from them makes me confident to be able to sell mentoring, at 7,500. And I'm like, I'm very confident that I can help the right kind of people. So as long as they go through the application process and they're the right kind of person, I'm super confident that I can really help them a lot. So my point is, it's not a complete failure, because you get bigger ideas, you think of more products, you get better at the thing that you're focusing on, and it ends up being good. You could consider it almost R&D that you get paid for. So that's pretty cool.
Right. So you knew this was going to come up, but I'm going to talk about my the project that I'm basically on the verge of killing off, which is good old Mandarin Weekly.
Oh no!
And I think like, so here's the thing. I've been doing it now for about 3 years, and I have 21,000 subscribers, and I can basically like, and every so often, like, I don't know, I sent out a note in August saying, sorry, nothing is going out this week. I'm on vacation. And I was flooded with email from people around the world saying, oh, have a great vacation, have a good time. Like, so clearly people are reading this and people are enjoying it. But just because they're reading it doesn't make it a commercial product. And my original, so just like for those of you subscribers who have not followed the ongoing saga of Mandarin Weekly, so I'm taking Chinese lessons. There are lots of people around the world. The number is approximately 40 million people learning Chinese. Peter Cooper has his newsletters for different programming languages, and I said, oh, what if I steal that idea and do it in like for people learning Chinese? Because there are tons of blogs and videos, and wouldn't it be great to assemble them for people to look at, and then I can get advertisers to sponsor issues. So the major flaw in this thinking, and Peter himself was very kind. He sent me an email a few months ago in response to a query I sent him. And he said, look, people are willing to spend lots of money to advertise to programmers. I don't know how much people are really willing to spend to advertise to like people learning Chinese, many of whom are students or in poorer countries. And that basically was a good analysis of the situation. So I've tried a few other things to raise revenue. I said, instead of sponsoring an issue, you can sponsor a link. It's like one of the roundup links then, so it's going to be cheaper than taking full sponsorship. So I hope maybe some people would be interested in, handle that. And I've had like one taker for that. One taker for 4 weeks, but really, we're not talking about huge amounts of money here. I then said, okay, well, maybe I can make it customizable. So you could choose what topics you want and what levels you want. So if you're only interested in advanced grammar, you can click on those checkboxes and you will have a customized newsletter of that sent to you. It really wasn't that much work, truth be told, using drip tags. I was actually pretty proud of how not hard it was to do that. But of course, technology doesn't sell products. The products sell the products. And I tried all sorts of ways and so I call that Mandarin Weekly Plus. And then finally, as like a Hail Mary, like 2 months ago, maybe a month ago, 2 months ago, I sent an email to everyone and said, okay, I'm reducing the price of Mandarin Weekly Plus to $15 for life. You pay it once, and you never have to pay it until I stop publishing Mandarin Weekly. And by the way, I put that in there on purpose, knowing this was a possibility. You will get to customize it, and you'll get it several days earlier than everyone else. And people signed up, but not a lot. And now every week I'm getting like 2 signups, and I really need like 10 signups a week to actually make it happen, to make it like pay for my, I don't know if my time even, like pay for just the software that I'm using. I've got a ton of people on Drip, which is costing me something per month. And I've got a Feedly subscription, and I've got a whole bunch of other things I'm doing. And then there is my time. And so a friend of mine suggested about a month or 2 ago, set a date. And if it's not making money by then, kill it off.
Yeah.
So I set May 1st to be the date. And the next day I got calls from 2 advertisers.
For you, the listeners of Freelancers Show, Loot Crate is offering an opportunity to save 10% on any new subscription at lootcrate.com. Just enter the promo code BRIDGE10 for 10% savings. Loot Crate is one of my favorite things. Every month I get a box in the mail, costs less than $20, and it comes with all kinds of goodies. I have stuff from, just looking at my shelf, Batman, Spider-Man, Ninja Turtles, Back to the Future, Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, and much, much more. So if you're a geek, a gamer, anything like that, and you want cool stuff to put around your office, cool t-shirts, comic books, etc., then definitely check out Loot Crate. To save 10% on your new subscription, go to lootcrate.com/Ruby. Again, that's lootcrate.com/Ruby to save 10% on any new subscription. Enter the promo code BRIDGE10 for 10% savings.
I mean, I think I agree with Peter Cooper's take on it, that it's perhaps not the most attractive audience. It's not not obvious who was trying to get at that group of people. It's a very diffuse audience that's has like this one interest in common, but otherwise is probably very unusual and a very global audience. And we've talked in the past offline about, let's brainstorm some stuff and like what might they be interested in. But, I know you've gone through that and it just hasn't panned out, which it's endlessly shocking to me. But there you have it.
I mean, there is a huge market for apps and classes and all sorts of other stuff for people learning Chinese. Like it's a lot of companies doing this. But they tend to be small, like mom and pop operations or one person operations or whatnot. And so they're not going to spend a few $100s on advertising. And when they're not going to do that,
but how do you know that? You know that, or you think that?
I've approached them.
Okay,
I've asked them. Okay. They've asked me, and like on numerous occasions, people either said, "Well, we don't pay for advertising," or "We don't pay that much for advertising." A very common response that people had was, "Well, you can be our affiliate, and then we'll pay you per click."
Right.
And so I tried that a little bit. Almost nothing.
Yeah.
Almost nothing. So I even considered, well, maybe I should hire someone to like do a new layout. Maybe that would change things. But I don't think that's the problem.
No, I agree.
I decided basically to stop throwing good money after bad. I'll do it for another month or so. I mean, we're now mid-March, so I'll do it for another 6 weeks or so. And if things have not changed totally dramatically, I'll email anyone who has signed up in the last, 4 months, 3 months, and say, listen, I'm killing it off. Like anyone who has paid for it in the last 3-4 months, so I'm killing it off. If you want, I'll refund your money. Otherwise, I'd appreciate. I appreciate your support and you're giving money toward all the expenses that I had in putting this together. And I'm guessing that half of them will want refunds and half of them won't.
Right. What if you sold it to someone?
I thought about that, and I wouldn't mind that. I mean, I certainly wouldn't mind that. I just don't know who would want it. Because there are
21,000 people on the list. Somebody might be interested. Hey, does somebody want to take over Mandarin Weekly? $1,000 or whatever.
Yeah, I guess something's better than nothing.
And I would almost consider that just to not let down the 20,000 people who appear to be pretty engaged.
I have like a 20% open rate between the two drip sends, like the original and the follow-up. So and we're still talking thousands of people for sure.
Yeah. I mean, it does seem really weird. It was always, when I first heard about it, I was like, no way. Because it seems so, it's obviously so disconnected from your core business.
Right.
And it's not making tons of money. So that's, back to opportunity costs and distraction. So I agree with the date idea. I agree with what Peter Cooper said. I know you've tried a lot of anything that I could have come up with. You've tried. So yeah, I mean, you gave it a shot.
And I'll even add to that. I spoke with a friend of mine who's a publisher in the Chinese education business last week in Shanghai. I'm currently in Beijing. And he was not surprised. He was like, yeah, I mean, he's trying to sell things to people who are learning Chinese. And he was not terribly surprised that it's not like a super lucrative market for people like me. So, yeah, maybe we'll try to sell it as sort of a last hurrah to, maybe someone might be interested in it. We'll see.
Does Alibaba have affiliate links? Yeah, I know we're going down the rabbit hole here. But yeah,
I think, I'm open to more ideas, but I think I'm basically resigned to the fact that I tried it. I should have tried more things maybe a year or two ago, just to see if it would work. But every week now, really every week for 3 years, Saturday night and Sunday, it's not that much time, it's like 2 hours, 3 hours max, putting together these newsletters.
Well, it's 150 hours a year.
That's right. It would be nice to get that time back to work on other things. As you said, a book, other newsletters, recording courses, all that other stuff that I want to be doing, but I'm currently constrained. So I just need to free up that time, and especially if it's not making money. So there you go.
All right. Well, end of an era. But yeah, this is the struggle, right? I mean, it's tough to tell. And I've got a couple of other things written down here that are different than anything we've talked about so far, or not, or it's maybe a little bit similar, but sort of different. So like recently I do another podcast called Terrifying Robot Dog that I co-host with Kelly Shaver. And it's basically a future tech podcast about how technology is changing the way we interact with the world. And we started doing it under a different name years and years ago, maybe 5 years ago. We've been recording more or less every week for that whole time. And as my business went in a different direction, because when I was doing more development and coding and that sort of thing, it made some sense that I could get business out of it. But as my business shifted more toward the hourly billing is nuts stuff, it made less and less business sense. And leads that I would get from that podcast they were just for things that I don't even want to do anymore. So after a while, and Kelly wanted to go on and do a more fictional podcast. So we were like, let's just sunset Terrifying Robot Dog. And we in fact announced that. And after a couple of weeks, we just like missed talking to each other, and we started it back up, but with a new sort of a new motivation. We were like, oh, you know what? This isn't a business thing anymore. This is just us having fun, having our weekly phone call, and we happen to publish it on the web. And it changed it just reframed it for both of us. Certainly for me. I don't want to put words in Kelly's mouth, but it totally reframed it for me. And I was like, now it's just fun. It's just a fun part of my week that I look forward to. And it's no intended outcome other than it maybe not even, there's no intended outcome. It's just like to hang out. So that was, I thought that might be an interesting story to share, because it's so weird from the outside. You would never know that sort of thing. And that's another possibility. If you just reframe what the point of the thing is, kind of pivot the motivation, then, it takes some of for me, in this case, it took the pressure off of, like trying to grow the audience. And now I just don't care. So it's a lot less emotional effort to do it. So less friction, easier, more fun, all of those things. So it doesn't feel like, it feels even less like work than it might have.
Were you previously preparing for the episodes, or was it also just like a conversation sort of thing?
Usually what would happen, about 75% of the time, there'd be an obvious topic to talk about. There'd be something in the news that was just jaw-dropping. Then part of the reason we killed it was that the news was getting so bizarre and so far out of it was weird. Things got boring and crazy at the same time. Because for a long time, we could do an entire episode on gadgets. And when AI started to really take root, the gadgets don't matter anymore. It's more like what they can do. And every episode turned into like self-driving cars and AI and machine learning. And it just wasn't that interesting. And but then on the other end of the spectrum, there was, in other words, as the technology kind of started to disappear and seep into everything, the idea of having a gadget episode was just weird. And we're like, wow, check out that shift. For a while we were talking about 3D printers and, smart coffee makers and all this. And all of a sudden, like one CES, and it was like, all right, we could talk about everything, which is kind of like talking about nothing. And then on the other end of the spectrum, stuff that's happening with like, in biotech with like CRISPR and gene modification is just so freaking weird and outside of our area of expertise, because we're very much like software developers, and that stuff is just, I mean, that's what's happening in tech, but we just feel kind of clueless to talk about it in an intelligent way. So we're like, what do we talk about? We can't have another SpaceX episode or whatever, or Tesla or Uber or whatever. So we took a break, and now it's more like, now we're just sort of like, hey, what's going on? And we end up, since we're both nerds, we end up talking about nerdy stuff, which is the kind of audience we have anyway. So yeah, I mean, that was sort of it's fine, right? It's just no expectations now. So it's zero pressure.
Right. And having a nice conversation with a colleague once a week is a good thing, mm-hmm. as I well know.
So I've got we're not running too long on time. I still have some more things on my list. Did you have other stuff that you've killed or you're thinking about killing?
I just did one other thing. So I'll do one thing. Maybe you can do one thing, or these short things, and we'll finish up. So I actually was inspired by your group coaching. So I have among the main things I do, I have a newsletter for trainers called Trainer Weekly. And I've been doing it in part because I want to sort of write about a bunch of training related things, in part because I'm trying to put together stuff for a book, in part because I thought maybe this would be a good way to get into coaching. And so I offered coaching, and some people took me up on it, and they were super satisfied and happy, and most people did not. So I said, well, Jonathan has this great group coaching thing. Maybe I'll try that. And that worked fantastically for 1 month. And then everyone was like, okay, this was enough. Bye.
Right.
So I basically just killed off group coaching. I said, okay, it's like, because what's going to happen is an individual will join, and then they're going to say, well, where's the group? And then it's just sort of ridiculous. So I'm going to keep the individual coaching going. I've got to be better about marketing it. I'll have to put it back in the footer for Trainer Weekly. But yeah, the group coaching I think only works when you have a large enough potential audience. Like, I don't know how many subscribers you have, but I'm guessing it's in the thousands.
Yeah.
And so all you need is a handful of people each month to say, yeah, I'll go for that. And poof, you've got your group, or even a waiting list to get into the group, I'm going to assume.
Yep. There's no cap on it. So there's like something like, I think I've had 45 people, something like that. 45 people sign up. A couple turned out, but not that many.
Wow, that's really nice.
Yeah.
So
it's much more
maybe
ongoing,
if
though.
and when.
So yeah.
I mean, the thing is, part of it is like Trainer Weekly. I think I have a few hundred subscribers at most, and so it's just not like it's not enough of a critical mass to be able to advertise that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe in the future I can always restart it. And so it was disappointing because I thought I really enjoy the conversations with those people, and I feel like I get a lot out of it. I'm forced to articulate my thoughts a lot better, and so I think I get better at doing my own training and am ready about training. But I'm not going to start beating people over the head, and it has to be worth it for me in terms of the money and time as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll let people do coaching, if they want, and I'll keep doing the free newsletter, as I said, which I can turn to a book at some point soon. But the group stuff, I think we'll just either have to wait or just never come back.
Yeah, I mean, just to give you some feedback, I get lots of people who mention to me that they've talked to you, because a lot of my students are, they're freelancers / consultant coders looking to go in a direction where they're not trading time for money. And one of the very common options is training. And I know they all know about you and they all go to you because, we've done episodes on this show where it's like, wow, I mean, we know you do that, but you really know your stuff. So it seems obvious. So quick piece of feedback. It seems obvious to me that the two things that would be obvious products for you would be, how to launch a software training business, book, and course. And it's less obvious to me what an ongoing Q&A group coaching office hours thing would look like, unless you got into the kinds of challenges that people are going to have over and over and over. But there's just, I mean, if I was going to launch a training business, I would be like, take my money here. Like, tell me how to do it. Tell me how to do other things. I've done it before, but you're way more successful at it. And yeah, I mean, that seems like an obvious thing. The group coaching thing is more of is useful, for people who have ongoing general business issues. So it feels, and I'm sure those exist in training. It's just, I'm not sure what
they do. That's the thing. I mean, that's good feedback and very flattering. But no, people definitely have ongoing business issues, whether it's, how do I deal with clients, and how do I, someone's approached me and I don't quite teach this. It's basically the same as general business, just sort of in a very specific sort of area with some specific needs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. Cool. Well, okay. So I've got really two quick ones left on my list. So one's really easy to talk about. It is, so I do a daily mailing list, and it's a live broadcast. It's not a drip campaign, meaning that if you join my list today, you get today's email. You don't get, some email that I wrote 2 years ago, and then you sort of slowly work your way through the sequence. It's like a live thing. What that means is, though, that you missed like 500 messages. So I was like, and a lot of people, and it seemed common, where people would be like, hey, you sent an email. I remember a while back. It was about this. I can't find it in my inbox. Have you got a link to it somewhere? And I didn't, because I didn't like the idea of having those articles on my website for reasons we could go into, but whatever. I'm not a blogger. I don't want to have a blog. I don't really like having those on my website. I don't want people just sitting there for 16 hours reading through 2 years worth of email. So it's just not it's not interactive. They don't get any help from me. They can't reply. There's no comment. There's just nothing. I don't like it. So, but I didn't like the idea of all that information being lost to, the other 7 billion people in the world who might be interested in it. So I said, you know what? Every quarter, I'll take all the messages and basically compile them into PDF, go back through and edit out, fix the typos and fix grammar and delete the ones that are, maybe announcing a webinar or something like that, the sort of informational ones, and just kind of collate them down into a nicely edited, formatted bundle and sell those for cheap. I think I was selling them for $19, and I think I sold like one, maybe two. And it was weird because people would ask me for old emails and, oh, is that online somewhere? And I'd be like, no, but I could dig through and forward one to them. But so it seemed to me like there was a market for it. I didn't really ask anyone, but it seemed like there was a little bit of demand just organically. So I figured it would be, a no-brainer. Like, I'll just do it, it'd be done, and there'll be something that people would buy because I was looking for something at the very, very low end of the market to convert somebody from the least risky way for someone to convert from a list member, which is free, to a customer. And, I was like, what could I sell that's really low, like $9 to $19, somewhere around there. So I did this, and it just totally did not work whatsoever. So, big deal. I spent the time doing it. It took some time. I probably put 10 hours into it, doing the editing of the 6 quarters worth of emails. And then after that, I was like, the next quarter rolled around. It was time to do it. And I was like, I'm not doing this. I don't want to spend an hour and a half doing this when I know none of them are going to sell. And so fine. So it was an experiment. It was interesting. It's probably too low, from a pricing standpoint. Just as an aside, from a pricing standpoint, that's probably too low, because that's going to attract people. Even if people were buying it, they would clearly be at the very, very low end of the spectrum. And I already have like a $49 entry. So having one underneath that is probably too low.
That's an interesting point.
Yeah.
See, that's the thing. You already had something that was for people who are like, looking to come up with new strategy and tactics for their business. So the daily email is like, well, I can just buy the book.
Yeah. I mean, the thing about hourly billing is nuts is it's not a how-to. It's meant to change the way you see your business. It's meant to open your eyes to the insanity of trading time for money. So if you're starting to get it takes a while for it to sink in with people. So that book is about gaining the confidence. Maybe you already drank the Kool-Aid and you need to buy it for your business partner or something. But it doesn't really tell you how to do anything. It's more like, look behind the curtain. It's bonkers. And then, the next book, Freelancers Roadmap, is the how-to. So I think it just didn't, it seemed like I was looking around. I was like, here's some sawdust. I could package this together into a product. I think it'll serve a need. People have no access to the old emails. So it seems reasonable, and put it up there, and just nobody wanted to open up their wallet. So no big deal. So that on the low end, that's probably the smallest, easiest one that I've dropped off. It was just extremely easy for me to make that decision. I didn't particularly like doing it. So easy peasy.
No brainer, yeah.
Yeah. And then a much bigger one, I don't think we've talked about killing off a service yet, but this was me killing off a service. I think at the end of, I think it was the end of 2015, beginning of 2016, I said I vowed to no longer code for money. I am no longer going to take on clients where I am expected to write a single semicolon. So that was a huge thing for me, because I had been a developer really for 9 or 10 years before that. My core identity was like web developer. So saying that I was no longer going to code for money and just do strategy advisory types of things was a giant. That was the kind of thing that like I sat with, thought about, built up a kind of pipeline. Pipeline's the wrong word, but like built up my marketing and confidence that I could get enough business selling strictly advisory retainers and strategy engagements and innovation workshops and things like that were not me pounding out code and Sublime Text. So that was a very big deal. And I thought about it probably for the whole year leading up to it.
Right, because it's definitely right. Because it's not just I'm killing off a service. It's I'm changing. And it's not just changing positioning. It's changing the identity of who you are in some ways, and that's very hard. Look, for how many years did I also tell people I'm a developer, and I still remember people asking me when I would want to do training. They would say, "Well, do you develop actively?" Because really, that's super important for our clients to know that they're not just getting someone who lectures on the subject. And several years have passed now, and I don't do active development. I mean, very rarely I will, but it's really, really unusual. And I'm no longer embarrassed to say, "Yeah, I mostly do training." And when people say to me, "But wait a second, how do you get practice doing programming?" I say, "I work on my own stuff, and I use my time preparing for class. Like I spend lots of time researching subjects, and in more depth than I could have as a day-to-day developer." Because then I was just worried about getting a product out, and now I can actually try to understand things and deal with these details and get them.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean...
But it's hard. It's hard.
Right. Like Michael Phelps' swimming coach can't beat him in a race. It's
yes. Like, that's a fantastic analogy there.
Yeah. It's like, I'm a trainer. I know how to teach this stuff. I don't need to be able to like... It's just two different skills. And... I've heard that before, and my answer is the same as yours. When it's like, well, how do you know your advice is up to date? And it's like side projects. I'm embedded in other companies that are doing these things, so I have a behind the curtain view into how big companies are handling this stuff. So I don't need to be like down in the code every single day. And there are some things I'll do proof of concepts, but it's not shipping code. Like I do not write shipping code. So, so there's still, but I'm moving away from even that. So, but that was a major shift. It was something that I said publicly to help me stick to it and not backslide. Cause like you just hedged a little bit a second ago. You said I mostly do training is what you said, and you're hedging. It's like, why not just say I'm a trainer? Like I do software training.
So I basically, the funny thing is like, I think that the development that I do is typically to just sort of like I have an employee to support him. So like we had something 3 months ago, where it was a Rails project, and but it needs some server configuration. And I just do that better than he does.
I see.
So I went in and I messed with that and I fixed that up. But like in a given 5-day week, let's even check that out. In a given 20 workday month, if I'm doing active code development for more than an hour or two for a client, it's a really unusual month. Mm-hmm. If I am doing an hour for a client, it's a really unusual month nowadays. Mm-hmm. And more than that is like off the scale.
Yeah.
Off the charts.
Yeah. I have one legacy client from years and years ago that I still do some what would be considered development. But it's a very small amount, and that'll be the last one. When eventually we part ways someday, hopefully never, because they're awesome. But at some point, that'll be it. Like when there's no more of that, I'm never going back. So, it's.
Well, I must admit, by the way, that one of the reasons that I got into training was that I found that I priced myself out of the development market. Mm-hmm. That basically, just the way consulting works, at the very least in Israel, is people are always looking for very low prices. And the moment I started coming in with high prices, and whether it be hourly, whether it be per project or value or whatever, it didn't matter. They said, I am not paying. I mean, I remember very well going to this it was a very tall tower in Tel Aviv. on the top floor of a penthouse with a spectacular view. And this company is selling systems for high-speed trading on Wall Street. And they show off their coffee machine to me that is like basically, if God had a coffee machine, it would not be as good as this one. and basically, then they say to me, we really need help with our database so that our system will be stable. I said, okay, I charge this per day. Oh my God, I could hire a developer for 3 days for what for a month for what you want for 2 or 3 days. I was like, okay, bye-bye.
Yeah, right. I would say, and it's going to take them a month, and it's only going to take me 3 days. Go ahead and hire them.
Right. So I was sort of in some ways pushed out of the market, which believe me, I'm very happy about. And so I've just sort of aged, priced out of the development market, in addition to not being interested in doing it so much anymore.
That's a good point, actually, because I don't really know if our listeners fall into a particular age group. I really have no idea, but that can be part of the reason to kill something off, because you're just aging to a point where once you move on and you get all these whippersnappers coming out of college who have low responsibilities compared to you, they have a much higher risk tolerance, they haven't got a family and a house and all the stuff, and they are willing to work crazy hours because it's still kind of fun. It's really hard if you are in competition with those people. In other words, if your clients see, me as an almost 50-year-old coder, like whatever, mobile web developer, and some 25-year-old who's getting out of college and has been freelancing for 2 years, if they see no significant difference between me and that person, I assure you that the 25-year-old is going to undercut my price. And if the client can't really tell the difference between us except for the price, then I am going to lose every time. So point being, the market, if you stay the same, if you offer the same products and services for years and years and years, the market's going to change underneath you. And you kind of need to change it up. Like, you need to start offering different things. Everybody knows this from like things like JavaScript frameworks changing and Flash getting killed by the iPad and so on and so forth. Like, you're forced to change a lot of times as a developer anyway, because of the tools and the landscape and that sort of thing. But even if none of that changed, every day they make more people, and those people are going to be willing to charge less than you. And if you are in direct competition with them, and the only differentiator is the price, you're going to lose every time. So you need to be constantly evolving. Not constantly, it's not like that much work, but you need to be regularly evolving the products and services that you offer as you get more mature, let's just say, and wiser and smarter and more nuanced, and sell those things, or at least project those things in your marketing as to differentiate yourself from people who do not have those skills or capabilities. And you can charge appropriately, because then it's like, wow, there's no competition. That's why we're all, Philip and we're all talking about specializing and niching down and pigeonholing yourself and all of that stuff, because as you get, as the list of available options gets smaller and smaller and smaller, you can command higher and higher rates. So like we were just talking, that the company with God's coffee machine, they were comparing you apples to apples with some other developer. And my rebuttal there would be what I said, which is like, yeah, but I'm better. So if you want them, then go ahead, get them. You should. If you think there's no difference between me and some joker that's going to, charge you a third, then you should hire them. I would do the same thing. But I'm here to tell you that there is a difference. And, and it's perhaps a failure of your marketing that they didn't know already that there was a difference. Or perhaps they were just, trying to negotiate, trying to undercut your confidence and that sort of thing.
I think they're just really cheap. But I think it's a very common thing in Israel.
They're not cheap. They have God's coffee maker. They're obviously not cheap. They don't value developers. That's the problem.
Right. Exactly. It's very, very common in Israel for consulting rates to be extremely low compared with the US and Europe.
So don't So don't call yourself a consultant. It's like try and sell a book for $50 like I do. It is hard. People don't expect to pay $50 for a book. And
of course.
Right, because books are $9, books are $19, books are $3. The books aren't $50. Maybe a college textbook or something is $100, but it's very unusual for a book to be $50. So I did that very much on purpose. So if you are being compared apples to apples, if you're a developer, developers cost this much. All developers are interchangeable. You need to come up, and the reason I brought up book is because there's like a societal expectation that a book costs this much. And if there's if you're saying that in Israel, there's essentially a market rate for a developer and that they're interchangeable like cogs in a machine, then you need to do something in your marketing to make them see you as something else, something different than this thing that they know how much it costs. Which is why online classes are kind of the Wild West right now. And you can find prices anywhere from $49 to, $3,000 for an online course, because there's not this societal norm of how much a course costs yet. So the prices are all over the place and people don't have an expectation of exactly how much it should cost. So there's a lot of differentiation in that market. And that's why I
actually got an email from someone. I was advertising, I forget which of my courses. And I got an email from someone saying, how dare you charge $200 for this course when I can get the same course on Udemy for $10? I said,
did they literally type, how dare you?
I think they actually did write, how dare you? Like it might have been something along the lines of like, where do you get the gall? But it was definitely like that, more or less.
Yeah.
And I think my response was something along the lines of, it's a free market. Don't buy my product if you really think it's the same thing and costs 20 times as much.
Yeah.
But I think it's not the same thing. Enjoy. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Buy, don't care. Like, and or as Seth Godin would put it, it's fine. It's just not for you. It's for someone else. It's not for you. Yeah.
All right. I think we covered our I don't know, our death toll.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, we actually made it through. I think we made it through everything. I'm surprised.
Excellent. Got any picks?
Do you run your own freelance business? Or maybe you're thinking about picking up some business on the side? Well, then you need FreshBooks. FreshBooks is the quickest and easiest way to get invoices out to your clients. It's easy to use. It works anywhere, available from any device, on the desktop, iPhone, iPad, Android, and all of your data is backed up and secure. And it makes it really easy to get organized and get paid. You'll be tracking time, logging expenses, and invoicing your clients in no time. You can also save time billing, freeing up several days per month to focus on the work that you love, and you get paid faster. FreshBooks customers are paid on average 5 days faster because there's a link on the invoice that says pay me now. And it's a great way to grow your business. Plus, FreshBooks is offering a 30-day trial. That's right, 30-day trial if you try them out. So go to gofreshbooks.com/devchat and enter devchat in the How Did You Hear About Us section. Once again, for a 30-day trial, go to gofreshbooks.com/devchat and enter devchat in the How Did You Hear About Us section.
I do. Here's a random one for you. No, this is such a weird pick. I'm going to go with this. I'm going to go with The Dip by Seth Godin. I mentioned it earlier. Check out The Dip. It's perfectly on topic for this episode. I confess that I have not read it yet, but I know it is exactly this because I work with a lot of people who are big Seth fans and they all reference this book. So I'm confident that if you are having this problem and you read the reviews of the book and the description of the book, then you'll find that it is up your alley. I think it's a very short book and is, I imagine since it's a book, it's probably pretty cheap. So I would recommend that. As always, I'm going to recommend people go check out valuepricingbootcamp.com if any of that last bit about pricing is interesting to you and how to differentiate yourself from competitors and, break that apples to apples comparison that hourly billing saddles you with. Then you might want to think about value-based pricing or perhaps creating productized services. But some way of disconnecting time from money because that will differentiate you from your competitors. And that's it for me.
Excellent. So my pick is a TV show called Counterpart, which is airing at least in the US now on Stars. And it's this combination sci-fi spy drama, sort of like Cold War spy drama set in the modern time. And you should definitely, I mean, if you're into that sort of thing, like in a very, very short, small nutshell, basically, it's one of these parallel universe sort of things where in 1987, I think they say, the world sort of duplicated itself, and now there's their side and our side. And it's about the spy agency on both sides that sort of deal with the interchange between the two sides and the two worlds and the Cold War that's going on between them. And J.K. Simmons, who's a pretty famous actor, he plays the same guy on both sides. And one is sort of a nebbishy person who works at this spy agency, and the other is the opposite of the nebbishy spy guy,
the evil twin.
Who can't right, exactly, and they can't stand each other. And it's a lot of fun and a lot of sort of good spy intrigue, and very light on the science fiction aside from this two world thing. So I definitely encourage people to take a look at it.
Nice. It reminds me of The Fringe, which was a fun show while it lasted. Also sci-fi.
Oh, I never saw it.
Yeah, very similar. There's one piece of the show that's very similar to that. It was a really fun show.
Excellent. All right. Well, I think we got through a lot of good stuff today. Jonathan, thanks a lot. And thank you all for listening out there in podcast land. And we'll be back next week on The Freelancers Show.
Bandwidth for this segment is provided by CacheFly, the world's fastest CDN. Deliver your content fast with CacheFly. Visit CACHEFLY.com to learn more.